Hello and welcome to TF Cast. On today's episode, we're here with Chris Bertrand, host of Keepin It Local on KMSU Mankato, and a local musician with a forthcoming album. Welcome to the show, Chris. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. It's a joy to be here in what you just called, what was it, the Wasp Room? Or the Wasp Room.
The Wasp Room.
We've got wasps with us today, folks. Yeah, man, like I said, I'm a local musician. Been going at it for a while. Finally working on my first album, and also a co-host of Keepin It Local with Ben Scruggs. And that has just been a joy to work on this summer because I've been able to be in contact with a bunch of different musicians in this community.
What was the kind of the idea that started Keepin It Local? It's a new show, right? Just a few episodes in.
We actually went all summer with it, starting. I don't know when we started. It's been so long now. But originally, we were able to acquire a time slot from KMSU through Jameson, if y'all know who that is. He had a show on there, and we just kind of leaked our way in and took it over. And initially, it was going to be every time we had a show, it was a monthly thing, we'd feature a local artist, and they would take up that whole hour. And that went well for a little while, and then COVID happened and all that. So we had to do the show from a distance. So now we've converted it into, we both choose songs, Ben and I. He has the heavier hand in that because he's got a deeper archive, and he's got a lot of good stuff. He'll basically choose a majority of the songs. I'll choose mine. We're looking out for upcoming events, local musicians who are playing this upcoming weekend or all this kind of stuff, and new releases as well. And from there, we choose the songs. He sends them to me. I compile them, total like CD mixtape kind of style. I love CDs, so I'm kind of keeping it alive in that way. I send him my audio bites. He has to respond to whatever I send him. So I mess with him that way. And then after a week, we got a show.
So you assemble the show by like stitching together the pieces and then?
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Okay.
If I can add on to that whole process is gotten really cool. For the past few months, I've been working with hemp oil in a still. So I'm boiling this oil, it rises. It's different components under different heat and temperature and vacuum and stuff. You're able to collect separate things, and when we call that fractions, hitting a fraction. Once you work past this fraction, a certain essence of the oil will come out. And I kind of started applying that type of thinking to making these set lists, or like any set list. You want to build an emotional response, and kind of, if you can, tinker with the listener's emotions as they're listening to it, and that's what that's kind of turned into for me is going about set making in that way.
That's interesting. So it is compiled sound bites, basically. That you're not in the studio like having the conversation.
Right.
I had wondered if you were like almost reading off a script in a couple of the episodes because everything was so like it was punchline, and kind of like it was. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it makes a whole lot more sense.
Yeah,
it does sound very. I don't know what the word is for that, but it makes sense when you explain it like that.
Yeah, it's just it's been a developing thing. Now we're in a good rhythm of it, but when COVID hit and we had to make that adjustment, it was a little bit of a stutter step into it, but it's going pretty smooth now. Yeah.
Do you think that you'll continue to use that format when you don't have to?
That's a great question. So I have to give a shout out to who we call Snowman Steve. His name's Steve Firkins, and he's an artist, a visual artist that lives in St. Peter. And he we're grateful for it, donated during KMSU's last pledge drive, and was able to give us extra time during our slot. So we basically had an extra 2 hours on top of our hour show this past week. And we were able to go back into the studio for it. And it was such a weird change. Like we had Steve with us, we had Ben and myself. And yeah, after so long of being at a distance yet working on this project, we were entirely cohesive. It was strange, but it was flawless at the same time. It was like nothing ever happened. Yeah.
It's nice when things are able to come back together like that and
Definitely.
fit back. So with the show, what sort of music are you playing on it, and what sort of talking is it? Just for people who haven't heard it, maybe.
Sure. So it's called Keepin It Local, and we call it that for the purpose that it serves. We feature nothing but original local music from the Mankato and southern Minnesota area. We reach out a little bit into the greater state if it has a tie to here. But basically, yeah, we're pimping out local artists, and we've got a handful of artists that had never been played on the radio before. So our ultimate goal with it is letting people hear that music that hasn't been heard yet.
That's really awesome. It's good to get some playtime for the local artists. And can you tell us some of the band names who are repeat offenders on the playlist?
Repeat offenders, I like that. Well, Be Balm Fields for sure. That's a group that Ben is a part of, and depends on what era we're talking about too. I mean, a lot of contemporary stuff, but we dive back into the great archive that Mankato music has. So we do a lot of City Mouse. Those guys are great inspirations for us. We respect what they do, and I think they're starting to respect what we're doing too. Be Balm Fields. We've got Caleb Braun Schultz. If you don't know who that is, just young kid, just ridiculously talented. He's got a few pieces of, a few albums out now. The production's just fantastic, and he's just fantastic. Folky stuff. We got Bruce Davis, and like Lee Weber. He's out of New Ulm. I could go on and on, man. There's a lot of them.
Sounds like a diverse selection.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
I noticed that in some of the ones that you had tracks that were going back like way far, and that's interesting because the area has its own influence over time as well. I really like the idea of it being regional. That's something we talk about a lot, is because we want to focus on regional stuff at Triple Falls too, because I think there's some value to people tuning in and just knowing like this is here, and hopefully people want to come too.
Creates a relevance for the people who might be tuning in. It's a good way to connect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's
geographically,
and having an appreciation for what was here in the past. I kind of view it like, okay, you got a friend that, say you spend 3 years next to them, at their side. You're not going to notice the little changes that occur with them, maybe like at least visually, as opposed to that same friend, you haven't seen them in 3 years, say they lost a bunch of weight or something, right? And they come back, it's like, oh my God, that's a big difference. I kind of always have that thought in the back of my mind working with the show. Okay, here's Caleb. He's playing this fantastic stuff and it's contemporary. How does that pair up to this older track that we're playing? What community, what about the area is reflected in both? That intertextuality between the songs is something that we kind of strive for as well. Yeah.
Deeper context. Yeah. That's really neat. Do you find that you can hear influences sometimes, like whether it's in the writings of the artist or maybe in just the style? Can you pair it like that too?
Sure. Well, not to keep talking about Caleb, but Caleb is, God, I guess I shouldn't say what his influences are. He should say that for himself. But there's Beatle-esque stuff. I think there's James Taylor stuff in it. But that's on a surface level kind of thing. If I think about it locally, I'd say Caleb's got some Ron Arsenault to him, of City Mouse. Man, there's a group called the Divers. They've been around for a while, I guess. I think they're out of New Ulm.
I think they're Bethany professors, actually. I'm almost positive because I remember seeing them when I was very young.
Okay.
Like they would play at the Martin Luther College where my parents worked in New Ulm.
Okay. Yeah, I'm from New Ulm, so I know
yeah,
it well.
That would
I longboarded down that hill once, and
oh no,
it was only once. That was the last time.
I suppose to put what you call longboarding down the hill. Like, how far did you make it?
Well, I didn't go from all the way at the top. There's like a side street that's like 3/4 of the way up. I made it all the way down, but there's a strip of metal at the bottom, and I ran over it, and that was like one of the scariest moments of my life.
Yikes!
Yeah.
Longboards and high speeds don't go well together. Found that out myself.
No, and I'm not one with the gloves to like do the curves and stuff. So.
Yeah, that's wild.
But yeah, the divers, like, I can see resemblances in like the Little Prairie Pickers. I don't know if you know who that is. That's extension of B-Bomb Fields, kind of with Laura. Once you play and make all these set lists, once you kind of have that power of putting these songs together and everything, you start to notice the intertextuality that and the similar conversations that all of these groups are having. Yeah, and a lot of it's due to being in this area.
So we've talked a little bit about the Keepin It Local station. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the music you play and musical projects you're involved in?
Okay. Well, COVID hit us hard as far as like playing with the groups, but I'm in a group called Schell's Angels out of New Ulm, and it's totally the brewery, Schell's, yeah. We can't advertise or we can't make merchandise, but
shoot,
we got the right to the name.
That's fun.
But that's a lot of like rock cover kind of stuff, bunch of weddings and all this kind of stuff. I play bass in that, and then I play bass in Pete's Just Mirlyn as well. Just dipped my toes into that probably a year and a half ago, might even be longer.
No tuba in the Schell's Angels.
No tuba?
I was polka suspicious when I saw the title. I was like, it might be.
I'm trying to think of like other situations where you would have to use that phrase, polka suspicious.
That is a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, tuba is like an awesome instrument. I would love to get my hands on one and just bang on it for a little bit, but like they're like insanely expensive. I think they're like many thousands of dollars or something.
And you don't really see them just lying around anywhere either.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe around New Ulm you might run into a tuba or a
there is a tuba surplus store in New Ulm, yes.
I think there's a couple of accordion repair shops too. They might just be people doing it out of their house, but if you wanted to put together a polka band, New Ulm would be the spot to do it.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, the Bachfest boys. Yeah, that's what it is.
Bachfest.
Yeah,
boys.
they play at Bachfest and all this kind of stuff. Similar kind of stuff as Schell's Angels, like cover kind of stuff, but much like more like big band, like horns and stuff. Yeah.
So, what's it like playing with Just Mirlyn and then the Schell's Angels? How are those different?
Great question. Well, I've been in Schell's Angels longer, and in Schell's Angels, it's kind of like it's a trio with Lauren singing. So it's actually four of us, but three instruments, just like Just Mirlyn. But I do a lot more singing in Schell's Angels, and the feel of it is much different. Like where Schell's Angels is a lot more like rocking, like get in your face kind of rocking kind of stuff. And Just Mirlyn is more Pete's adventure. Like it's his kind of baby. So it's a lot of his original stuff and a little bit more of like a folkier country kind of style. Yeah.
Some of the earlier stuff that I heard from Just Mirlyn had more like the 2016 stuff, maybe around that had a little bit more of like a upbeat rock tempo from what I remember. I haven't like done a whole bunch of listening on that, but is that just like how the group's changed over time?
Well, his songwriting, I would say, from a distance, because I'm like I've learned a lot of Pete songs, but they're Pete songs for a reason, like they're how do I put that? They are so this area, like he's encapsulated that very well. And as I think for him, as time has gone on, the more country feel is more suitable to that. But that first Just Mirlyn album, like that's my jam too. Like it was kind of 90s-esque kind of stuff. So Just Mirlyn is definitely capable of both of those type of feels. Yes.
Were you involved for the recording of that album?
No. So I got in pretty late for that. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. We after recording with Pete for our cast with him, we did a little listening to that too, and it's interesting to hear the side by side difference and the way that his music's evolved.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think you can see that in a lot of projects, a little bit of an evolution.
What about your personal work? The songs you played for us today, those were are those going to end up just you with the guitar and vocal tracks, or are you going to be adding more instrumentation to those?
Definitely adding more instrumentation. So I'll have to think, which three did I play?
We had Crochet Blanket.
Okay, yep.
Madeline
and Blue Skunk.
Blue
Yep. So I don't think Blue Skunk will end up going on this record that I'm putting out, and that's going to be called By the Pour. And I'll explain why it's called that in a second. Basically, I want to make like a 20-song album. Like, nobody puts out longer records anymore. It's all just like either quick EPs or sometimes not even that, just people getting by off of singles. And I can understand that, like the need to do that, especially contemporarily. However, there's just like some satisfaction that comes from having that larger project. So it's definitely going to be way more than just the guitar and the vocals. Pretty early in the project, we're only at like 3 songs or so starting, so there will be many more. But what was the second part of that now?
Genre, how would you describe the music maybe?
Rooted in folk, but just more like, I don't know. I hate describing my own music. I hate it. When I think about my music and how to describe it, I gravitate towards explaining the lyrics, talking about the lyrics, because it's a big project to put the instruments down and everything like that, but that can kind of be superfluous. It can be a little bit extra. It can kind of distract from what the lyrics are saying at sometimes. So this album that I'm working on, By the Pour, it's heavily driven by me getting over drinking, because I was like, I've been a big boozer for a while. And in the past like year or so, I've really cut down on it, and being distant from it has kind of propelled me into finally starting to work on these songs in a studio. And the the title, By the Pour, comes from a lyric of mine in a song called Minnesota Sweetness. And that's a song about me locking my ex-girlfriend out of the house accidentally. So yeah, we had plans to meet one night, and she said leave the door open, and some habit inside me, I was tired, whatever, and I'd locked the door and never woke up when she called, and she came from Mankato to St. Peter and had to drive back, and felt so bad in the morning I wrote it. So that the full lyric of that goes, barefoot soliloquies of Minnesota sweetness, tearing my heart out by the pour. So I woke up in the middle of the night, long after she'd left, and I looked up, and right above my mom's house, where I was at the time, the Big Dipper was hanging there. I thought, oh man, that's impactful. There's something to that. So now it's hanging, I've got a really good view of it between the trees when I leave my apartment, which is like a block away from my mom's house. So it's still there. It's still hanging up there. But it was a seasonal thing. It hangs there at that time of year, like summer approaching into winter and everything. It hangs there, and then it kind of disappears for a while or whatever. But I thought that was pretty impactful for the drinking thing. Pour has many meanings. By, just the simple word by in this scenario, has multiple meanings, either by or next to. So the album kind of gravitates in that kind of realm. A discussion about getting over drinking and just troubled times and things that I do to get by those troubled times. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something a lot of musicians seem to struggle with. Like, what got you out of it, or what made you want to change?
It's a great question. A lot of things compounded. Like I'd been feeling unhealthy for the longest time. That's for sure. Where I worked at the time wasn't conducive to that habit either. I was working in a bar and grill. So, one drink after work turns into how many every time?
Yeah.
And it was something that kind of carried through from college, to be honest. I don't know if you guys remember Boardwalk Arcade. There was a group that I was in down here in the college days, and we had a decent amount of success. We put out a couple records and stuff. But coming into college, drinking all the time in college, it kind of never stopped for a few years. And to wake up out of that is kind of, no pun intended, sobering. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I do think it, especially for a lot of service industry people, like it becomes such a habit. I mean, I'm a service industry person myself, so you see people who it's part of their daily habit is just drinking throughout the day, and it's a balancing act even for the best of us.
Yeah, very true.
So I mean, yeah, I'm excited to hear the album that brings me through it here. A lot of folks talk about albums in this way, and I'm very similar, where I kind of romanticize the idea of an album itself because I like to put one on. What made you decide that you were leaning towards an album in the first place? Like, is there something about that, or is it just the size of the thing?
It's it's a concept that reminds me of being in the past. When I was growing up, the CDs were the thing. Like making mixes, and going to your buddy's place and using LimeWire and getting their computer, full of viruses and stuff. Like in the process, like it was totally worth it at the end, because then you'd have that sweet mix that you could listen to for a week and then on to the next one. So I guess just having that package, I think that's just a perfect delivery system. We can't really do that these days because everything is so digital, and I would like to hold on to that for a little while longer. I think to have that physical product, even the informational pamphlet or whatever that comes in it, with lyrics and everything. I want to do that whole thing because it's more of like a hot media. Hot media, you can pick it up. You are physically part of it, as opposed to cold, where you can just download a song, you listen to it, and then you're not actually physically there with it.
Yeah, I know a lot of bands are doing this thing now where like cassette releases again, and the cassette is a widget. Like they go into it knowing that almost no one will listen to this cassette. And sometimes they're just terrible cassettes anyways. Like they're low quality cases, low quality tape. Like the only thing that's available anymore is Type 1 anyhow. But like people want that. They do want the experience of picking something up and supporting someone in that way.
Yes, yeah. It's a nostalgia factor, really.
Well, and without a physical object, you've just got, I don't know, it's like easy to lose track of those things. And
right. It's an ownership thing, like if you're holding this and you can physically take it with you, like you are an owner of this music now. It's not just me or whatever artist made it. Like you are now even more so a part of it.
I have a question about the last song you played for us, Blue Skunk. And I heard elements of like I don't know if it was a funk or like a little bit of kind of a reggae sort of rhythm to it. Do you know what I might be talking about there?
I think there's enough empty space in the way that I performed it that anything could really flow into it. I'm glad to hear that.
I heard that. It was really neat. Yeah.
Who knows what that song is going to end up as after it's fully recorded. Man, the 3 songs that we've been working on so far, my buddy Rich and I, Rich Ostrom, by the way, he was in Boardwalk. He's my engineer for the album. We went in and just recorded just the bass, not the actual bass, but the acoustic guitar, rhythm tracking, and then vocals. And all of a sudden, like, holy crap, here comes everything else that would make this song cool, So reggae. I'll have to see if I can incorporate that a little bit.
I don't know if it was the speed or the rhythms, but I sensed a little bit of that. Wasn't sure where it was coming from.
Sure. Well, if it's skunky, I mean reggae. It's kind
of. So for the recording of those, you mentioned like you kind of do the bass with the guitar and the vocals. Do you have other people who come in for the other parts, or will you end up playing bass, things like that?
Depending on the song, I think. So far, I've been able to come up with bass parts that I think, like that's what I want on there. But once we're further along with all the songs, I'm going to be reaching out to other like local musicians and everything, and be like, hey, you want to throw something on here? Horns for sure. I want some horn players on there for sure. Yeah.
Be cool. That's tough to simulate. I guess you do everything recorded too, or do you do any like production in the digital production for them?
A little mix of both. We're still pretty early on, so I couldn't say what each song is going to require. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool. I like you guys were talking about doing albums. I think that's a really nice way to share media, because it's nice to be able to kind of tune in to the artist's experience starting from the beginning to the end.
Absolutely.
I wish that
storyline
more people than the people in this room felt that way, because I think it is gone. Like albums are.
Do you think so? I think vinyls are making a comeback.
I think that they're the same thing. Like a lot of people who are even buying cassettes and vinyls now, the technology, like there are really great record players out there, but when I look at the record players that are sitting next to the records that I know people are buying, they're like trash Crosley units. Sorry, Crosley. But like, like a good turntable, or like even like I don't see good styluses for sale anywhere in, like they don't have that stuff at Best Buy. They don't have it at Target. I'm guessing we got Toontown here. They got some stuff, they got quality. But even there, like you're not seeing like, high end, good turntables. So I do think that people are just, buying it, getting the digital download codes. They want the experience of putting something on the table. But I just don't think that it's really brought forward the appreciation for the format of the album itself, like that 40 minutes of music. And I don't think people are going to stop wanting things doled out to them at the rate of their attention span. And I mean, even in how we distribute things, we've found that, giving people things piece by piece, they engage with it more, so I guess it's just weird now because you get data about every single little thing. You can't do anything on the internet without being told how it performs, why it performs that way, and how many seconds people looked at it. So, I mean, putting out an album, people might, watch the first or listen to the first 40 seconds of it, and that seems like a waste of the talent because there's so much in that album. And, maybe even just getting someone to the track that they needed to dive in is what's most important. Or making it available. I don't know.
Well, it's ultimately up to them if they want to listen to it or not. I would hope that people would. But I guess working on an album and putting it out the way that I would like to, it's like a self-rewarding kind of thing. Like this is something that from my childhood, this is what I experienced. I can't exit my childhood, if that makes sense, in this musical way until I've done that myself. Yeah.
And there's a big difference, in my opinion, between 40 minutes of music and an album. And I think artists have even started to talk about that when they're releasing something, like how they want it to be listened to. I can't name an example of it, and I wouldn't want to just throw someone's name out there like that. But you can certainly tell when you get a piece of someone's music and it sounds like a collection of singles that were released over a period of time, and they don't really interact with each other the way an album would have been required to previously. Not like albums always did that well anyways. A lot of times when we had cassettes or records, the track order was determined by what would play out in the amount of time that was allotted.
Sure.
So
do you plan to release it digitally as well? Have it on Spotify and things like that?
Oh yeah. Okay. I feel like I'm subject to the times, and of course I want to have a bunch of people hear it, as many as I can. Yeah, I'll just always hang on to that physical part of it. To hold that in my hand afterwards would be a great thing. But you were talking about having people being able to tell if an album is just a bunch of compiled singles, and that's something that I'm considering too. Like the trick I think with that is writing singles that communicate with each other. Having some type of continuity. As long as you have a certain amount of continuity in your songwriting. I think that'll be present.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
And I do think that's what keeps it's what keeps me coming back to an album. If listening to the album is an experience over it, like, because I put singles on repeat too. Like, there's a song, it speaks to me. Like, I'm gonna listen to that thing on repeat until I'm sick of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, that's one of the nice parts about the discovering via digital as well, is you can find a song that you like, it gets suggested to you or whatever, and then if you do like it, you can like follow that through and listen to the album through. I find myself doing that a lot, because growing up, I didn't have much of a connection with albums, and I think maybe it's because I always had compilation tapes, but yeah. Anyway,
nothing wrong with those though either.
Yeah.
But I've developed a little bit of an appreciation more recently, just doing that basically with Spotify, like finding a song that I like and then getting to hear it within the context of the album. It's a nice touch. So I guess both seems like the way to do it.
Yeah. We were talking about attention spans a little bit before too, like keeping people focused on one thing for a long period of time. Maybe the trick is just like make a big album and just have the whole thing like fast forwarded, kind of like just like like 20 beats per minute, like faster or something like that. So they're still listening to the whole thing, but it's just quicker.
If your music sounds good, sped up to 120% maybe.
Yeah. Maybe not. Who knows?
It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I do that for DJing a little bit.
Do you?
Speed up your tracks, but it's mostly an energy thing.
Yeah.
Could you do that at the show? Play it twice as fast?
We could mess around with it. I'm sure we could.
I don't know if it would fit the vibe.
Changes the energy.
It's just purely experimental at this point.
Yeah. I'm just thinking out loud about this now. I feel like these curated playlists that are all over the internet that are honestly competitive now for people to get on them have replaced a lot of how people listened to albums previously. Because the way people talk about playlists is like, oh, have you listened to like da. Once again, I don't want to give out a bunch of examples for it, but they get super popular. Actually, I will give an example. The what is it? Peaceful Piano. Like, that can make your career as a contemporary classical musician, getting put on that playlist, because it is so popular. And I've read about artists who it's like, oh, I got put on this and it was a huge break for me. Or, like it was just an enormous amount of exposure. And I don't know, that's
it's just interesting to see how that all
how people
plays in.
How people listen to music in long form now.
Definitely. Well, so out of all your projects, are you the bands that you plan, have you been performing out at all with those?
The solo stuff, absolutely. I had a really busy summer, way more busy than I thought I would.
That's pleasantly surprising.
Yeah. Well, I quit my job in January for the reason of going out and just doing music, because I had already been booking for this summer and it was filling up. In February I had May, June, July, and part of August booked. Then all these things happened and whatnot, and that kind of sucked. But, as things started opening up, basically I was just proactive with my emails, and I was like, hey, how are you feeling about having music? Or like, is your business going to be doing that? What's the deal? And as opposed to just waiting around to see if they would reach out. And yeah, it it filled up pretty good. A lot of wineries and stuff, a lot of outdoor stuff, obviously, but that all the better for the summer.
Yeah, that's really neat. What sort of things did you see businesses putting into place that made that work during this time?
Sure. Well, I think it was easier for the vineyards and stuff, because they naturally are capable of providing socially distant environments. So they never really slowed down as far as my experience went. But like the wine cafe, you know, like I've played inside many times, and it's cramped in there a little bit, but it's still like it's part of that ambiance to be playing there. Like it feels comforting to be in there. But something as simple as just adding that patio, like adding that boundary and setting out some tables, and it's great to see that places were able to adapt like that. Yeah.
That seems to be the thing, really, is just making sure people can show up and be comfortable sitting there and not feel like they're, I don't know, being exposed unnecessarily.
Well, and there are varying levels of comfort too. You know, like some bars are a little bit crazier than others when it comes to the late night hours, and they've got to work against that a little bit. But you know,
it's difficult times.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to hear you've had some stuff going on this summer. That's neat.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And your fall, do you have things people can look forward to? Maybe.
Less so than the summer, I think. Now that I'm getting the toes wet with the recording process, I think I'll reel off on playing live. Probably it's gonna get colder anyway, and who knows what venues are gonna be able to offer with the pandemic going into winter. So yeah, a lot of recording time. I'll probably end up releasing singles, you know, as much as I was like kind of hinting that I'm kind of against it a little bit. Like I'm probably going to end up doing it because I've been talking about this, you know, doing recording for how long, and I just kind of have to put something out there to be like, hey, yes, this is happening. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, next couple months, fingers crossed, hopefully have a song or something online.
Neat. Yeah. Well, we've got a couple here that we'll have out and available too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you said of those three that Crochet, Blanket, and Madeline are going to be on the album, but not Blue Skunk?
I'm still undecided. Or maybe they will. You know, I've got By the Pour, which, you know, it's for me it has more connections to my music as a whole than just the drinking thing. There's more than that in there. But there is like also another side collection of like way folky stuff that if you're listening out there and you want to be in a bluegrass band, get after me, because like I want to. That's a whole other project that's going to end up happening. Yeah. So Blue Skunk might end up on there. That might end up on the little bit more folky one, or maybe there's gonna be a reggae album, like you said.
Cool. Yeah, it reminded me of a little like John Wayne and the Pain or something.
Okay.
Bit.
Okay.
Anyway, so keep that in the back burner, maybe.
I will.
Cool. Well, thank you. Should we? You good?
I was just going to ask if there was any like time frame by which you were operating for releases. But it seems like you kind of answered that on your own. Yeah.
I would like to have the album done in a year. Who knows? Who knows? If winter's really bad and it's pushed off, it might be a little bit tougher. But I'm hoping for a year. Singles throughout the winter. I could probably say at least 3 or 4.
Cool.
We'll say that.
Well, we look forward to it.
Yeah. You got anyone you want to plug, or anything you just want to say while we're out here?
Yeah, man. Thanks to you guys. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and I didn't see a single wasp. So that Country Living magazine must have done a good job before. We'll have to look at the photo for the cover of this, see if there's any wasp remains or something. No, anybody that's gotten me to this point that I've played music with and communicated with or played your stuff on KMSU or whatever, thanks for being you. You got me here.
And if people want to find your projects or interact with you online, how do they do that?
So I'm not huge into the social media stuff. Like I got a Snapchat, but I never put anything on. Like I don't have Twitter or anything like that. So just Facebook, or give me a call. Message me on Facebook and then ask for my number. We'll go like that way.
Cool.
Yeah,
that works. And
right.
Listen on KMSU. When's that airing again?
So I think our summer schedule is gonna remain the same. So Thursdays at noon, KMSU 89.7.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Tune in Thursdays at noon. Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me here.
All right.